The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 917, coming to you on Monday the 15th of October 2018. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic General Observations on Crime. But before getting into the topic, one short preliminary. My condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And now for the topic, General Observations on Crime. I've called the topic General Observations because there are no definitive hard and fast rules about crime. And one can build almost any discussion on the subject of crime and differ from the views expressed by other persons on the same topic. What is clear to me is that as I research the situation throughout the Caribbean and elsewhere in the world, I have not found a single country in which the rate of crime has either remained stable or has gone down. And if anybody knows of any country where crime has been reduced over the last 10, 20 years, I would like to know. Because it seems to me that in every single country in the Caribbean, at least the English-speaking ones, whose newspapers I can read online, and all the developed English-speaking countries, I can't read you newspapers from France because I can't read French, but all the English-speaking newspapers that I've come across, I have yet to find a country where the statistics on crime have been more reasonable nowadays and more acceptable than in times gone by. And I am therefore led to make the statement that crime is increasing everywhere that I know of. We who are confined to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and don't listen to news from other countries or don't read newspapers from other countries may tend to feel that our crime rate is escalating, which it is, and therefore something is wrong. But the same thing is happening in every single Commonwealth Caribbean country whose newspapers are available. There are years when in some countries there may be a slight dip in the crime figures compared to the year before, but sooner or later it increases. So if you were to do a graph, you will see a general increase, sometimes a little plateau, occasionally a little dip, but the upward trend is unmistakable in every single Caribbean country. And therefore, those who pledge that they can do something about crime and they can do something about the statistics and they can bring about a reduction in crime, are perhaps intending to buck the trend. Now, every government in the Caribbean, and I want to let us confine ourselves to the Caribbean, every government is facing a crisis where crime is concerned. And not only in the numbers of crime, but also in the kinds of crime. There are more crimes involving violence nowadays than there used to be in the past. And in all Caribbean countries, there is an unmistakable trend of an increase in crimes involving guns, firearms. The murder statistics in the Caribbean reflect an increasing use of firearm as the weapon of choice. And the prevalence of firearms in all these countries facilitates the use of gun-related crimes. One of the factors which is responsible for the growth of crimes is the nature of the upbringing of young boys. And in all the countries of the Caribbean, crimes committed by females remain at about the same proportion as crimes committed by males, but on a far lesser scale. Prison populations in the Caribbean reflect that there is a disparity between the numbers of women incarcerated and the numbers of men, sometimes in the order of 20-fold, so that it is easy to find 20 times more men in jail at any one time than you will find women. And we should ask ourselves, how come? The vast majority of crimes are carried out by men and not by women. Well, the sociologists and the criminologists and the anthropologists and the psychologists and the other gists have various answers for that. But the fact remains that if we analyze the crime situation in any Caribbean territory, we'll find that the age of offenders is getting lower and lower. In that, in times gone by, most offenders were people either in the high teens, early 20s. But as you get into the 30s and 40s, the numbers of offenders fall off. These days, the age of offenders is down to 15 and 16. Long ago, very few boys of 15 or 16 were found to be involved in crime. Nowadays, an alarming number of young men are the ones perpetrating the most crime. So therefore we have to look at the structures in the homes and see what is going on in the homes. Why so many young men are getting involved in crime at such young ages. And we don't have to delve too deeply into the structures of our family units to see one of the problems. One of the problems is that there are far too many boys growing up without the influence of a father figure in the home. We can't get away from that. Assuming the father is not a habitual criminal himself. The vast majority of fathers would have a beneficial influence on their sons if they lived in the same homes with the sons and had an influence over the young lives and over the young attitudes. Because there's a vicious cycle. Young men grow up in homes without a father figure, and in turn, they, as young men, father children with whom they do not live. And some young men will tell you that their father treated their mother in such a dismal way that they don't intend to treat their girlfriends any better. So we still have the habit of boys going around fathering children here, there, and everywhere, and sometimes don't have the means to support the children they father. Many of them are unemployed, and even when they get employment, the support of their children is one of the least of their priorities. So if we have a growing number of young boys being brought up without a father figure to influence them, we will have a growing number of crimes, many of them committed by these young boys. Some of these boys have been sent to school when they were young, and since discipline has effectively been removed from schools, they have gone through schooling without getting the necessary disciplining that used to be the case in long-time days. So that we should not be surprised about the increase in crime and by young persons. You shouldn't be surprised at all. But I will tell you what, in my view, should be the factor which should occasion us the least surprise, is that the trend in the history of mankind, as indicated in the Bible and as predicted in the Bible, shows that the scriptures are being fulfilled. Now, I am not a theologian, but anybody who is acquainted with the Bible would know that it has been predicted that in the end of time there would be increasing violence, there would be increasing aberrations in the nature of sexual relations, there would be a growth in delinquency. And the Bible has accurately predicted that when children start to produce children, as has been happening in the last umpteen years, it is a sign that mankind is decaying and that the Lord is ready for his return to claim those who believe on him. We can't expect that the Bible would not be fulfilled. And a lot of the trends in modern societies have been anticipated and predicted in the Bible. You may not like what I'm saying, but you don't have to be a theologian to see that the things which were predicted towards the end of time, towards the return of the Lord Jesus, are coming to pass before our very eyes. And if you listen to the brethren on Encounter night after night, these are many of the themes which they speak about. I don't know if somehow we believe that what is in the Bible, we'll put that on hold and don't really bother with it and try to look for explanations of the decay in mankind. But our societies are decaying, predictably so. I would invite the brethren on Encounter to bring to us the specific scriptures which describe what will happen in the last days. And you will see, quite apart from the physical phenomenon of increasing in pestilences and increases in earthquakes and natural disasters, quite apart from those which are happening with increasing frequency and intensity. Quite apart from all of that, the nature of man is deteriorating. We no longer care for each other as we used to, even in this St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Family structures are decaying. Most quarrels you hear nowadays involve members of the same family. A lot of the cases going before the court, particularly over land, involve members of the same family. Where is the love? Where is the unity? Where is the togetherness? It is disappearing. Selfishness is abundant everywhere. The times when neighbors looked out for other neighbors and lent a helping hand, those times are fast receding. It's all turkey fighting for its own crop. That is what appears to be the norm nowadays. You can hardly trust people these days. Predicted in the Bible. Nothing strange, or should not be strange. Mankind is becoming more and more wicked towards other mankind. When you listen to what is going on in the Middle East, it shows you that mankind is rapidly approaching self-extinction. There is no news bulletin you can hear on any of the major international news sources that don't involve the wanton killing in various conflicts in Europe and many in Africa, where humans are exterminating other humans. We hear last night on the news of threatened starvation in parts of the world, and you saw some television pictures of people like skin and bones, almost skeletal in their appearance because of famine. And many of these famines are triggered by domestic conflicts, which spill over into international conflicts, creating the largest refugee crisis the world has ever known, where so many millions of people have been uprooted from their own home countries and are seeking refuge in other countries, where many of them are being brutalized. Now, when you read these things and you go back and read the Bible, you'll see, wait, this is perhaps what was spoken about that would happen towards the end of time. But these are things beyond my intellectual competence, in that I have not been a student of theology, but for those students of theology to whom I listen, this is the message I'm hearing from them. And there comes a time when mankind behaves so much at variance from what the Creator taught that the Creator usually decides to take care of them. In other words, He decides to punish them. If you go back to Genesis, you will see that when mankind had become so evil that the Creator decided He will destroy man from the face of the earth. And He ordered Noah to build the ark. Well, there comes a time when mankind behaves in such a way that the Creator intervenes and deals with mankind. So that brings me right back to crime. As long as there are people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, crime will increase once the Lord tarries. And there is nothing governments can do effectively to stamp out the causes of crime. They can deal with the consequences of crime. That is the court system and the penal system. But as to preventing crime happening, how are governments going to prevent crimes from happening? They may lessen the pace of the increase in crimes and take other beneficial measures to increase the conditions in places where crime breeds. But to promise that crime would be dealt with and eradicated, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. I will prepare a program on what I feel are the weaknesses of the judicial system, because I do believe that well-meaning but misguided sentiments in the judicial system are making the problems worse. Because over the years, the trends in the judicial system by the senior judges in our appeal courts and the Privy Council is to lessen and lessen the severity of punishment, so that many criminals laugh at the system, because if caught and convicted, the treatment meted out to them does not amount to punishment so as to be a deterrent to those who are contemplating committing crimes. And the senior judges sit happily in their domain, want to treat all offenders with kid gloves and believe that all offenders need is to be mollycoddled and that somehow they will come out as model citizens. Well, I beg to differ from the evidence of my own eyes. As a senior citizen of 73 years, I have seen what I have seen. And there is a place for the concept of punishment. But the judiciary seems to want to abolish punishment. So whereas the Russian novelist Dostoevsky wrote his mammoth treatise on crime and punishment, there seems to be a trend nowadays that it should be crime and rehabilitation. So removing punishment from the homes, removing punishment from the schools, and we try to remove punishment from the prisons. So the wages of sin would no longer be death, and not literally but figuratively. But I will prepare a program just on that, because I think our senior judges misread the society and are bringing in such lenient policies. And I will go through the recent principles of sentencing where they are forcing judges and magistrates to impose lesser and lesser penalties. And even when the governments through the parliaments increase the punishment, the judiciary is finding a way to minimize the same punishment that Parliament is trying to impose. So Parliament would say the punishment for X and X offense should be so many years imprisonment. The judiciary says, well, hold on. You can't impose imprisonment, or you should not impose imprisonment for the first time. And if the person pleads guilty, he must get a third off if he pleads guilty at the first occasion. So whereas the parliaments are trying to do what they can to impose punishment, the judiciary, unfortunately, are being forced to decrease punishment. And when you lose the correlation between crime and the punishment, then you are surrendering the battle. And I'm sorry to say, you are practically encouraging those who would commit crime to commit the crimes, knowing that the so-called punishment would be tinged with leniency. But I will speak some more on the topic on another program, not necessarily next week's program, but a subsequent program. I hope I have said enough to provoke some discussion on the topic. So that is all from this program of The Law and You. I look forward to being a further service to you next week, Monday DV, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.